The Positive Grid Spark 40 was released 4 years ago and has since become one of the best-selling practice amps. Although a super fun and solid amp, it certainly wasn't without some quirks. And now Positive Grid is back with the new Spark 2 amp, which is the next iteration of their flagship desktop amp, with a crazy amount of updates and upgrades. Onboard looper, bam, you got it. Ability to play on the go with a battery pack, bam, you got it. Now, these are just a few of the huge upgrades to the flagship Spark amp. So in this video, I'll be taking a deeper look into the Spark 2 and all its new features. I'll cover everything you need to know about this amp, and we'll also talk about the pros and cons, who the amp is right for, and we'll also compare it up against all the other amps in the Positive Grid Spark lineup. So what is the Spark 2 for those who have never heard of Positive Grid's Spark amps? The Spark 2 is a 50-watt desktop practice amp and Bluetooth speaker with inbuilt amp and effects modeling. So together with the accompanying app, you have access to over 30 amp models and over 40 effects to create virtually any tone you would want. Now, for those who have a Spark product, a lot of this isn't new. So in short, the Spark range work as great guitar amps, but also as great home speakers for listening to your favorite tunes. And together with the Spark app, it has some really cool and fun smart practice features that I will show you later in the video. First though, let's actually dig into the Spark 2 and the differences between the original Spark 40 and the Spark 2. So as you can see, the Spark 2 is slightly bigger than its predecessor with a black grille instead of a brown one. Now the top panel labels have also been relocated towards the front of the amp for clearer visibility, whereas on the 40, the labels were obstructed behind the knobs if viewing from front on. The Spark 2 is also compatible with the Spark battery pack, so you can take the amp and play on the go for up to 12 hours on one charge. This is in line with all of Positive Grid's other Spark models, which are all portable amps with the exception of the Spark 40. Now the battery pack is sold separately, but the Spark 2 does come included with the AC power supply, like the Spark 40. The Spark 2 is a 50-watt amp, and the Spark 40, as the name suggests, is a 40-watt amp. The Spark 2 has also addressed that boomy low end many users noticed on the Spark 40. So you're getting a much clearer and balanced sound when playing guitar and listening to music through the Spark 2. Now, to improve the overall sound of the guitar tones from the amp, the Spark 2 also comes with the new Sonic IQ DSP found in their recent Spark Live amp, which provides more advanced tube emulation. On the back panel, the Spark 2 now includes stereo line out jacks for more routing flexibility and also a USB-C port instead of a USB-B. On the top panel, there's now a power button instead of a switch. The knob to the far left on the Spark 2 is now a preset selector with up to 8 onboard presets. Press the knob to switch between banks A and B, which each have 4 slots. On the Spark 40, this knob cycled through different amp types. The music volume control that adjusts the Bluetooth audio level has also been relocated now to the main row of controls. The Spark 2 now comes with an improved thicker strap for carrying the amp around, and this is probably more important now since the Spark 2 can be used portably with the battery pack. The Spark 2 also features over-the-air updates, which is a huge bonus for people who don't have a Mac or PC. Now, what this means is that you can update the Spark 2's firmware without plugging it into a computer and downloading the software updates. Now, finally, the biggest upgrade to the Spark 2, which I am the most excited about, is the onboard looper. I cannot count the amount of times I've seen people request this feature on Facebook groups and forums. With the existing Spark range, if you used a looper pedal with your Spark and recorded your loop with one tone, let's say you recorded that loop in clean, and then you change tones on your amp to something more distorted to improvise, it would also change and affect the sound of your recorded loop to that new tone. And this is because all the modeling and processing of the guitar tone is done on the amp after the looper pedal. There are third-party workarounds to this, like the U-looper pedal, but now with the Spark 2, it's all inbuilt, so you can loop all day long. Now, the Spark 2 has 2 different looping modes. The first mode is the simple looper, which is a standard looper with overdub capabilities. You can access the looper directly on the top panel using the dedicated looper controls or through the Spark app as well. The looper top panel controls are very simple to use. You have the record and overdub button. Push this and you'll be given a 4-beat count in, and then you can start recording your loop. There's the play pause button to play and pause your loop after it's been recorded. the undo and redo button if you want to undo and redo any overdubs. And you can also hold this button down to clear your loop and start again. And finally, the tap tempo button, which you can use to set the tempo of the looper's click. Let's take a look at the simple looper using the onboard controls. If you want to adjust how many bars the onboard looper will record, you'll need to do that through the app. By default, it's set to 4 bars of your selected tempo. To change the loop length, just tap on one of the settings and then you can tap loop length and change it from there. The second mode is the super fun and creative groove looper. This mode that you'll find in the Spark app gives you hundreds of drum tracks to choose from to use in your loop creation. So we'll jump into the groove looper. First, I need to add a drum beat. So I'll tap add drum. You can choose from hundreds of drum beats here. To audition them, just press the play button. If you like a drum beat, you can also favorite it by tapping the star button. I'm going to add this one here. Now all we need to do is record our loop. Whilst we're in the app, I'll just quickly run you through how the Spark app works and the key features. Now, the Spark 2 comes with 8 inbuilt presets, but if you really want to fine tune your guitar tone, you need to dive into the Spark app. Now, in the tone panel, you'll be able to see your signal chain moving left to right. Now, each effect in the chain can be turned on or off by swiping it up or down. To browse through different gear options for your signal chain, simply double tap the effect or amp and you'll be given a list of over 30 amps and 40 effects to choose from. And in the app, you can fine tune the parameters of your gear by sliding your finger up and down on the setting. Now, with all these amps and effects at your disposal, you can achieve pretty much any tone that you're after. And if you're happy with the tone, you can save it to your app for future reference or save it to your amp into one of the 8 presets. If you want some inspiration or ideas, you can also jump into the tone cloud where other users share and upload their favorite presets. So here you can see there's a Metallica one, a Dire Straits one, Bend the Fend. You can search by different artists or keywords. So the tone cloud is a really cool feature. Now over on the music panel, you'll find all the fun jamming features. We've already covered the looper, so let's check out the Smart Jam. With Smart Jam, you can create a backing track for your own chord progression in an instant. Play your chord progression and the app will do the rest. If you want something really quick, you can also check out Quick Jam, which are a whole bunch of grooves and backings in a bunch of different styles. You can adjust the tempo and key of these to your liking as well. The next smart feature is auto chords. You can jam along with your favorite tracks and the app will analyze the music in real time to show you the chords whilst it plays from the amp. Use the search button and it will scrape YouTube to give you results. Tap on a song to play and auto chords will show you what it thinks the song chords are. Now this is a cool feature, however, I will say that it's not 100% perfect, so use it more like a rough guide. I would always recommend players to use their own ear and not always take what AI says is truth. Where this does come in handy though, is that you can loop certain sections of a song. Like let's say there's 4 bars which are giving you trouble, you can loop that again and again to practice along to, and that's something that I really like. Finally, the last main feature on the app, and a new addition released alongside the Spark 2, is Spark AI. Here you can give the app a prompt about a tone you want, and the app will generate a few tones for you to sample. So let's take a look at this. So we'll jump into the Spark AI tab and just type in a prompt. So let's look for a clean and atmospheric tone. Hit enter, and it's going to give you a bunch of options. We could preview them by just pressing the play button. And if you want to reload some more options, you just press this reload button and it'll give you some updated options. Let's try another prompt. Again, I think this is a really cool feature, but it is in beta stages and it's not perfect. I would say it's really great to help you with a starting point, but I do think it's really important as a player to be able to understand how to craft and create your own tunes from scratch. So that's it for the Spark app. Now I'll be comparing the new Spark 2 against the other Sparks in Positive Grid's lineup. Now, recorded through the line out or USB interface, all these amps will sound more or less the same since it's all digitally processed. The Spark 2 and the Spark Live, however, have more advanced DSPs, so they're a little bit more dynamic than the others. However, what most players want to know is how the amp will sound in their room. I'm going to place a couple of room mics here and we'll use the exact same tone patch on each amp. Hopefully this will give you the best indication of how each amp will sound in your space. So now let's run through a brief side-by-side spec comparison all the Spark amps. We have the Spark Go, we have the Spark Mini, the Spark 40, the Spark 2, and the Spark Live. All of these amps are compatible with the free Spark app, which allow you to fine-tune your tones, access Smart Jam, auto chords, and access to the free tone cloud. They all have the same 33 amp models and 43 effects available to use, but the Spark 2 and the Spark Live have an upgraded DSP for improved response. They also all function as Bluetooth speakers when you're not using them as guitar amps, so you can listen to your favorite music. And you can also do that whilst you're playing guitar too, of course. Now, in terms of power, the Spark Go is a 5-watt amp with one 2-inch speaker and a passive radiator. The Mini is a 10-watt amp with two 2-inch speakers and a passive radiator. The original Spark is a 40-watt amp with two 4-inch speakers. The Spark 2 is a 50-watt amp with two 4-inch angled speakers. And the Spark Live is a 150-watt amp with two 1-inch tweeters, two 6.5-inch woofers, and two reflex ports. In terms of portability, the Go and the Mini are powered with an inbuilt lithium-ion battery. The 40 needs to be plugged into AC power. And finally, the Spark 2 and the Spark Live can be powered with AC or on the go using the optional Spark battery pack. All the amps in the lineup are single input amps with the exception of the Spark Live that has 4 input channels. All of the amps are compatible with the Spark Control X pedal as well. For onboard presets, the Spark Go, Mini, and 40 feature 4 onboard presets, whereas the Spark 2 and the Live allow you to save up to 8 customizable presets. In terms of loopers, the Spark 2 is the only one with an inbuilt looper and ability to use the Creative Groove looper in the Spark app. So with all of this in mind, what situation is each amp best for? Now, the Go, with its incredibly compact size, is the amp I turn to if I'm traveling and I'm short on space. It's really so compact and can fit into any gig bag or guitar case, even into a pocket. So if you need an amp on the go to scratch the itch and you don't need that big sound, this is the one for you. There are no tone and effect controls on the amp though, so without the app, you're only able to cycle through your presets and can't adjust your tone on the fly without the app. Now, the Go is great, but naturally due to its size, it's not exactly room-filling sound. So that's where the Mini steps in as another super portable and rechargeable option, but with superior clarity and power to the Spark Go. Now, the size is a little bigger though, so it will fit into a backpack, but probably not into any guitar cases. This is the amp that I like to use around the house if I want to play in different rooms or use it as just a Bluetooth speaker. Similar to the Go, there's only onboard presets and no physical knobs to tweak your tone on the go without connecting to the Spark app. Now, the original Spark 40 takes the power and the volume to that next level, and it can crank a lot more than the Mini. But having said that, I feel that the sound clarity is a bit woofy and boomy on the low end. Other than that, it's a great desktop amp, but it does require an AC adapter, so it's more suited for a home studio or desk setup. In addition, it's got physical knobs on the top panel so that you can easily dial in a tone without having to dive into the Spark app, and I think this is handy for a lot of folks. Now, the Spark 2 is a big upgrade from the 40, and by all accounts, it beats the 40 in every single way. And it's the only one that features an inbuilt looper as well, so that solves that frustrating issue that you'll find if you use a looper pedal with any of the other Spark amps. With the addition of this looper, the Spark 2 becomes the ultimate desktop practice amp in my eyes, and the best amp in this lineup if you want a versatile, potentially portable, loud, and fun desktop amp for your home or studio. It'd also be suitable for a small live venue too, in my opinion. Now, finally, the Spark Live is the only Spark amp that features multiple input options with 4 channels. It's got that 150 watts of power too, so the Live is the one that's built for performing musicians who might have a microphone and a guitar and keys in one setup, and for those who might be playing in a full band setting. So finally, let's finish with the pros and cons of this amp. Now, as far as pros go, there's so much to like about this amp. They've taken every weakness that the Spark 40 had, all the negative feedback and all those wish lists that users spoke about in online forums, and they pretty much addressed all of them with the Spark 2. So in a way, I'm not too sure how they'll actually improve on the Spark 2 in the future, as they've got pretty much everything you need for a great practice amp in one product now with the inclusion of that looper. I still think there's a market and use case for all the other Spark amps and traditional amps, of course, But as far as desktop amps go, this is a really great deal. So let's talk about the downsides of the Spark 2. Now, I've said so many good things about the amp, it might seem like it's perfect, but one thing I didn't like is that they have removed the amp selection knob that was originally found on the Spark 40. With this knob, you could manually choose from different amp types without having to jump into the Spark app. The Spark 2 maintains all the physical knob controls for the amp EQ and adjusts the mod, delay, and reverb levels, but there's no way to actually change the amp type without connecting to the Spark app. Their trade-off is that you now have 8 onboard presets. So if you're happy with those, then that's great. However, if you want to just quickly turn it on and dial in an amp tone on the fly without the app, it's a little bit more difficult. And I feel like this defeats the purpose of providing those physical controls in the first place, since the amp model you use is probably the most important aspect of a guitar signal chain and the resulting tone. Now, this isn't a deal breaker, of course, and there is a workaround. You can simply just save your favorite amps onto a few different presets and just sort of memorize where each one is. But it is really clear you won't get the most out of this amp unless you use the app in order to tweak your tones and all that. The app is really great though. It's simple to use and very intuitive. But yeah, that would be one of the biggest negatives that I see, is that they've removed that amp selection knob from the Spark 2. But again, not a massive deal. So that's everything I think there is to know about the Spark 2. If you want to find out more about the Spark 2, I'll leave links in the description. Thanks, and I'll see you guys next time on Guitar Zero to Hero. Cheers.